you at your people level. So we're talking extremes. So what happened in the mixing? What happened in the mixing is that we are two extremes of people. If we want to talk about white people and black people being the same species, some people say, Neanderthal, we not, fine. But let's say we're the same species. That means we're on the same wavelength as a human being.
Exactly.
All right. We're extremes. We're two extremes of the same species. What differentiates us as two extremes? DNA, the planet of the sun, the amount of melanin we have. White people have melanin, it's tiny, tiny, tiny. That melanin, that lack of carbon, that lack of filtering fucks up your brain on a planet of sun, of a planet of UV rays.
Science.
It fucks your shit up. What does that mean? That means that you have different thought processes. You think about things differently. Your extremes are different. The way you go about things are different. I've said, if we're the same, because I want to keep us on that. We're assuming that we're the same, so people listening can't argue that they might be something else. I don't care about the RN gene right now. I know everything, so I don't care about what we're talking about. I'm saying if we're the same, then we're extremes. If we're the same, we're on the planet of the sun. That lack of melanin is fucking with their brains. If we, as human beings, existed in a certain way, then something happened in existence to take us far away from each other. So, albinos come, albinos are black, they look black, they act black, we know they black, we know they have lack of melanin. At some point, that had to be some kind of anomaly that was so extreme that those black people, blue black people were like, what the fuck is this? Knock it over the head and it can't exist. But at some point, somebody's going to love that child and it has to exist. And they have to be moved away from the people that'll knock them over the head. This is humanity. So, and this is what people don't get. You got to have an encompassing amount of wisdom to understand what's really going on in the world. So at some point, those loving people push the people who are like, I don't know what that is, away. And then we get a middle ground. And then you start to realize, oh, this person loves these albinos. They can't exist in this heat. This is burning them up. They know that because they can see it happening over and over and over again. Right. So we move them north. We move them to cooler climate. We move them further and further away. At some point, if we're the same and the Neanderthal isn't involved, or let's say as they moved away, they came into proximity of Neanderthal, and there's some intermingling that went on there, which pushed them further away and probably killed the Neanderthals out. Now they're existing in an environmentally, that is way different. So not only are we way different as DNA species, not only are we way different because we exist on a planet of the sun, and one of us loves the sun, and the other one of us wants to get in the shade as far as possible in the shade to exist. Now our mindsets are different. Everyone says that the Afuraka is mentally dumb or something. No, we're not. What we are is relaxed.
Too relaxed.
Right, too relaxed. Well, relaxed, but too relaxed for the war we're in.
Yeah. Okay,
we're relaxed because we're talking about development right now. We're relaxed because we exist in sunny climates, whether it's African meadows or South American rainforests. We exist in sunny and warm climates. What does that mean? That means that pretty much we ain't really got to do that shit. What does that mean? That means that if someone comes to you and says, hey, we need to do this, I could say, nah, I don't want to do that. Well, if someone says, well, if you don't help me do this, I'm not going to give you X, Y, Z. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to climb that tree and eat the mangoes, or I'm going to get some coconut, or I'm just going to chill. And then the person that's asking you got to be like, yeah, you're right. I really don't got no leverage to move you in a way because you can, everything's growing abundantly, free and clear in the warm and the sunny. So you relaxed. In the cold, it's different. If you're in the cold, if I'm existing inside the cold and you are tending the fire, fire doesn't have to be, heat us all up. It just got to keep us alive. We can't freeze to death.
Right.
I wake up in the middle of the night and you asleep. I just pick up a rock and hit you over the head, beat you down. And then when everybody wakes up and your parents are mad at you, I was like, he fell asleep. Fire's out. None of us wake up. Extreme. So the Caucasian, the Urugu, is extreme. So his thought processes are extreme. So that means that when he gets a thought in his mind, that thought is going to be an extreme thought. Because he exists in extreme environments over and over and over generationally. So when we go to war with them, when we exist with them, we're still dealing with the generational relaxedness of ourselves. If you don't know you're in a war, you're not going to act like you're in a war. So that's why black people had to be reminded they're in a war. That's why the story of Hannibal is so dope. Because it wasn't Hannibal. Hannibal was only Hannibal because his grandfather was Hannibal. And his father was Hannibal. And then Hannibal became Hannibal. And then Hannibal took the elephants. But he had to be taught that shit. That we're at a war right now.
Right.
And Hannibal had to be like, well, I'm not waiting for these motherfuckers to come here no more. We're going to go to them.
Right.
We're going to walk these thousands of elephants over this motherfucker. And get them. But he had to have great-great-grandparents that reminded him that he was in a war with these motherfuckers and they was coming. And he had to be preemptive. So, we live in America. Everything in America is preemptive. So when people are complaining, they out here complaining about Obama dropping bombs, we can complain about the reality of it. I'm upset that he dropped bombs on Libya because Libya is proof that you don't have to interact with these motherfuckers. You could be 75% autonomous in a world of where everyone's telling you can't. But you can, because technology is all around. All you got to do is spend enough money to get people to come to you and teach you how to do X, Y, Z, and spend enough money on resources. And you can do that if you stay autonomous, because you got more money staying with you. So when you need to spend it, you got more to spend. So, but why did he drop bombs? Why did they do Libya the way they did it? Preemptive. They had to be preemptive. They are aware that Libya was autonomous. Reagan dropped the bombs on Gaddafi kids. He was aware that Gaddafi said, fuck that shit, fuck these niggas, I'm gonna go do my own thing. That's 20 years, nobody heard about Gaddafi. Then Gaddafi came to America because he spent 20 years dealing with Africa and dealing with other people and finding his resources elsewhere, not fucking with America. And then he comes to America and says, listen, I got rid of all my bombs. Why did he do that? Why did he tell them that? Because he wanted the African nations to be more into him and be more okay with him. And he's trying to tell them, like, we don't need America. We don't need nobody. We can come together. We got all the resources here. So he fucked up in his strategy. Because America didn't know whether he got rid of all them bombs and shit, them nuclear weapons.
Right.
Until he said it out of his mouth.
So then they came.
Then they came. Because they were, and I'm saying that they came not only because he said it, but because they already had an inkling that he had got rid of them. They just didn't know for sure. So they wouldn't go and fuck with him for sure. Because they didn't know. They didn't know what he had been doing the last 20 years. They had been saying he'd been still doing it. And he came to the UN and said, listen, I got rid of all that. I don't need that no more. I'm about African nation and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not staying at these white people hotel. I'm staying on these tents in Long Island. He did all that. And as soon as he did it, I was like, they about to kill him. He gone. He gone. Because he done told him he ain't a threat anymore. Gaddafi was a threat.
Oh yeah.
Gaddafi would go for your head as a young man. And that's what happens. Elders have the wisdom. Youth have the energy. If you don't have elders guiding you, you will not be powerful.
Correct. Because
youth are brolic. Nigga, they still muscles busting from everywhere. You need elders to be like, man, oh man, y'all doing it, man, but listen, this is why you doing it. And we don't have that. So we talk about community and all that. We don't have that in connection anymore because we don't have communities anymore. That's why the destruction of black civilization is so powerful. That's why I never get off point. I'm always on topic. Once all of that happened, that Urugu has that mindset of knocking you down. When you get to the middle ground and start to mix, what happens is that extremeness is there. And what did they do? Black people, some of them accepted their mixed family, some of them didn't, but they didn't harbor any animosity toward them either.
Mm-hmm.
Where on the white side, they did.
Right.
On the white side, the lighter you are, the better. That fucks with the mixed person's mind. And so, because black people are doing nothing and pretty much saying, hey, you cool, I just don't want to fuck with you. Mm-hmm. Whereas white people are like giving you a detriment to going to the other family you have, treating you terrible because you go to the other family you have. That moves those mixed people over to the white side. Mm-hmm. And so now the mixed people become a weapon because they're mentally abused by white people. And now they think more like white people. And so when they go into areas of blackness, they can destroy areas of blackness. They do what gay people do. Mm-hmm. They became what gay people are. People like, gay people got all these rights and shit. Yo, they got them because you don't got to tell nobody you gay. You can craft a strategy before anybody knows you in their hen house. You done cook their chicken and you selling it in front of the hen house before they realize that you done got in their hen house and ain't your hen house no more.
Right.
So that's not anything powerful. That's smart. You kept your fucking mouth shut.
And that's the thing. Like I see it in California often. I tell black people, you can take a page out of the LGBT book because their propaganda is fire, and they go so hard because they push for themselves. And I was like, if we did the same thing, we can get the same type of power. I think back to the relaxed. We are too relaxed.
Yeah.
You know what?
We don't know we're at war, and it's even better. We don't have to do what they do. They're taking a page out of our book. Everybody should take a page out of black people's book. Mm-hmm. Why? Because that's better for black people. Because if feminist women are out there yelling and screaming, and now Asians are out there yelling and screaming, and gay people, homosexuals are out there yelling and screaming, guess what that means? That means Uruguay ain't watching us no more. Mm-hmm. It's the perfect strategy for us. There used to be two people in America, black people and white people. That's it. When you came here, you were either black or you were white. That's why Puerto Ricans in New York act like niggas. That's why they say nigga, because they black. By the standards of blackness and whiteness. They live in the ghetto. They grew up with hip hop. They niggas. They don't understand. Fat Joe and J-Lo are explaining to white people why they can say nigga. Mm-hmm. And because niggas are so fucked up or middle America niggas are so fucked up, because New York niggas we just live it. Let's sell to everybody. And let's just live. Now we can build culture. Now we're different people. Because now you can't do nothing with us because we're culturally entombed in who we are and what we are and how we exist. And we not influenced by aberrant, abhorrent outside activities and shit. Right. We do what we do.
So speaking of culture, I guess it's kind of wrapping this all together. You say you was in the Nation, right? Mm-hmm. When did you join the Nation of Islam?
82.
Okay. Okay, so you was there like in the power years. Mm-hmm. How did the Nation affect you? Like, what was your experience in there in the Nation of Islam?
So my experience, I was young, so I was 12 to about 17 in the Nation. For me, it was discipline. I was a kid. It's still talking about what we was talking about with the manhood and the manhood training. It was New York. It was in the basement. Brother Ave was my imam. He got killed some years later. I think he moved to Detroit or Chicago, and he got killed. Wow. In the real crack era. So knowing Ave, he was probably out in the streets, really telling people, stop this shit, because he was a good dude. Right. He kind of looked like Farrakhan, to tell you the truth. Dead serious. Light-skinned brother, but a good dude. It was in his basement, and so, I learned how to hold a post. In the wintertime, I'll stand out outside and hold a post. you know, people come up, you walk the women to the door, make sure they don't fall in the snow in the winter and shit like that. You didn't even go inside. You just held the post. It was FOI, so you held the post. That teaches you about security. It teaches you respect for men and their wives, and respect for the elderly because they're coming through. Just teaches you a whole kind of respect. You have a moral value that's different. You know, everything, it's no secret, man. Everything that Elijah taught, man, is true. Anything that they said about the Nation of Islam is true if you get the teachings. It's going to make you a better person. You know, it already makes you a better person if you go from, you know, being a heroin addict, and from when he really grew, when Malcolm was out there, that was heroin days. So people was leaning, and opium days. You know what I'm saying? So they sleep all day. They didn't wash. They didn't look like nothing. So to, you know, raise a person up and clean them up, get them off of heroin, real deep heroin, not the heroin they got now that let you go to school and be a school teacher,
right?
And you just take a shot and you can still do. I'm talking about people was sick because they didn't have jobs and shit like that. So you be leaned out and then fidgeting all day. So to clean them up and make them family people, married in strong families. Come on, man, that affected me considerably. It made me very powerful. But it also showed me the opposite dynamic too. Because like I said, I'm a scholar. So for me, everything has to be in alignment. I don't have any problem with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I don't have any problem with him having multiple wives. I don't have any problem with those wives being, you know, of the youngest adult age, because he wasn't a pedophile. They wasn't
say that.
They wasn't below age. They was old enough to have kids and all kind of shit. But if he had 5 or 6 of them, I don't have any problem with that. Why? Because he was a Muslim. And Muslims can have multiple wives. It's in your Bible. So you can say that you don't care about that right now, Christians, but I don't care what you care about. Right. I know facts. So I don't give a fuck about that bullshit. So I care that, you know, like when I was young, man, I was into Malcolm, but I was into Malcolm in a different way. Like I was into the Malcolm that was in the Nation of Islam. I wasn't into the Malcolm that wasn't into the Nation of Islam. Not because I hated Malcolm, but because I felt like Malcolm didn't really cherish his lessons. And this is my personal opinion. This, you know, nothing against Malcolm. I just felt he didn't cherish his lessons. Which is what? That he was following the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was always saying the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said. So when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told you to be quiet, you should have been quiet.
Just shut your damn mouth.
Right.
Exactly.
Simple. He'd have still been here. And still been Malcolm. Simple. He could have went. He was in New York City, man. So he's in was it Jersey? I think in New York or Jersey, one of those. But he's in the major area of people. So he could have shut his mouth and kept being Malcolm in New York. His mosque would have been bigger than anything. And then he could have took over if that's what they were worried about. He could have kept his mouth shut. And they wouldn't have any. It wouldn't have been. And listen to me. I don't think he cared about any of that. I don't think he cared about taking over. Let me say that right there. Not at that age. Not at the age that killed him. I don't think he cared about any of that. I do think that, from what I know, that he wanted to expand on what he was taught. And here's a problem that we have. Because we don't have the cultural, generational backing, he didn't know that if he kept his mouth shut and just kept being Malcolm, at some point, he would have been able to get everything he wanted. Because Malcolm wanted to get away from these white people. He wanted to build his own shit. That's what he was talking about. He was like, man, we need our black city. We need our own shit. That's what he was talking about. We need to do that now. We got enough people, we can do it now. And Elijah was like, we need to chill. This is new to these Caucasians, and we ain't got the military power we need yet. So I understand every bit of it. I understand why Elijah told him to be quiet. I understand that he didn't. So I understand it all, so I can have an unbiased appreciation for it all, but more than that, learn from the mistakes. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's what it did for me. It influenced me to understand that, listen, if you're going to build a nation, you really have to think like a nation. You can't think partially like a nation. And historically, nations aren't built in a day. You know, Malcolm brought a lot of people into the Nation of Islam because they wanted to hear that word. You know, they were rocked by the word. But historically, nations spring up, they take time. Egypt didn't spring up overnight.
Right.
That's why we're having an argument right now whether or not Egypt is Egypt or if Egypt was in Americas first.